dive into the experience of living in Cuba, the past to the present cultural exploration with a deep sense of nuance, which I really appreciated. We got a celebration of the food and the music and the vibrancy, but also, on the other hand, we got the controversy of the politics and the tensions that cause friction for individuals who identify as Cuban. The subject showed a real sense of openness to discuss it, and it allowed us to go on some really interesting explorations of the philosophy and the ethics and their personal experiences. I love the mix of interviews, conversational aspect, the old footage from reports and films, propaganda films, and capturing these Cuban sights and scenes, all with this common thread of freedom and identity tying it together. So the cinematography was lovely, and there was always some light seeping in, which I thought was really nice to keep a vibrancy to the shots. And I thought the music was also really important, as it seemed integral to maintaining that cultural Cuban sense.
I loved that the film Me Cuba starts with the music that it starts with. It was very tension grabbing and visually engaging with the short clips of different locations. I think so. Then they go into a lot of details about Cuban culture and especially about the impacts of music and dance in their culture. And we see it represented in different art forms and historical concepts. They go into a lot of details about the history of Cuba, not just the art and music history, but also about the political and territory history, which is very important. Um, and impactful on them today, especially. I think they did a good job at introducing the historical elements without being too fact centered, and they would draw it back to the current day culture.
This documentary is full of passion and a clear love and affinity for Cuba by the subjects featured in this documentary, which is a variety of subjects, all having a connection through their culture, but coming from various point of views. In highlighting the art of this piece, we do get a glimpse into the culture and the history. And it segues from there into the overall history of the territory in general, with Cuba's place in the Cold War and its part in the Soviet and American conflict, and how that history has affected every aspect of Cuban life, whether it comes to politics or commerce. The community is very prevalent in this piece, and it is clearly a love letter to Cuba, but also a lesson in its very complex history.
The story that sticks out to me the most is how this gentleman ends up coming and getting his hands on this very rare, unique painting, right? And his brother happens to be autistic or have some sort of mental disability. I can't remember if autism was correct in the diagnosis, but uh, besides that point, here we have this moment where his brother is face to face with this piece, and it's become part of their home, right? He thought he was going to try to sell this piece and just try to make a couple extra bucks. He didn't really see the value within this piece, but the moment that he witnessed his brother have such a almost spiritual connection with this painting, it made all the difference, and it ended up hanging up in their home for years to come. And then to find that this is such a rare piece from a rare artist that is very much the entity of the culture of where they come from. Therefore, really creating this dignifying piece of um, what and how Cuban expressionism was for these types of artists, to these families, to sharing these stories, the connections that humans have to art, the stories that they share, what they experience when they consume this piece. And it's really telling and beautiful to hear them swap stories and histories and the makings of.
I liked the length of it. I liked the content, the pace, and the meaning behind it. And the variety of from the variety of content and visuals was great, and the technical was there. I love the sound, the lighting was beautiful, and the music was great, of course, and again, the content with the history of the paintings, the history of, being told by the gentleman being interviewed in the beginning and throughout the whole thing that Cuba is rich in culture and art and creativity, that most Cubans do more than one thing as far as creatively. I just thought that was really neat. Talking about the music and the instruments and the food. And the sad thing is the political history and, even current political state of affairs really mars, I think, everything that this person is showing us about Cuba and the history and the creativity and everything. All of this was just so amazing to watch. Cool black and white footage too, I forgot to mention. And all the interviews were very interesting and very informative and just enlightening. There's a couple of things I wrote down that I can take from this, which one is using your experience in your art. So when the guy was talking about his military experience and didn't feel like he felt like it was a waste, and the other gentleman was telling him you can use that,
And it's just not about like people just sit and have the interviews like for the camera, but also they have like kind of like small conversations with the locals, have some footages that got it from like Cuba itself. So it gives us like the authenticity of the story, like it's kind of like first-hand information that the viewers would get everything like the Cuba is right now. And it's kind of like a good like cultural like travel log, like to understand like people like from that country. We might understand them as like a communist country, but we never been exposed like Cuba has like such like fun people. They have such like vivid, like colorful like lifestyles there, and this documentary like help like chat like that part like to us to understand more about them and to be like to have our eyes more open.